Wow, thanks for being here, everybody. Great crowd. My name is Bandhu, and welcome to the Life Raft series. This is called Asian American Actors on Stage and in Film and TV as well. I have the distinct pleasure of having a very esteemed panel in front of me. Many of them have been sources of inspiration for me as well. And so right here we have Francis Ju. Francis has done so much theater. He's an Obie Award winner, Lucille Lortel winner, Drama Desk nominee, a Drama League nominee. He just got done doing Kung Fu, David Henry Hwang's Kung Fu at Signature Theater off Broadway. He just finished his run last night.
That's why I look so beat up.
Well, practicing your Kung Fu skills. In addition, he has been on Broadway in Pacific Overtures, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and Butterfly, and has performed regionally. In film and TV, he's done a lot of Law and Orders, The Good Wife, and you were in a film as well, right? Joyful Noise.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. To his immediate left, we have Greta Lee. Who I saw on Broadway with Mark Rylance in La Bête. Amazing, amazing cast, amazing show. She just finished doing a pilot called Old Soul. It's Amy Poehler's new show, which was shot for NBC, but hasn't been picked up yet, right?
No, it hasn't.
So we're crossing fingers for Greta. She also recurs on an upcoming Fox series event, M. Night Shyamalan's Wayward Pines. And she's also had roles on Inside Amy Schumer on Comedy Central and the last two seasons of HBO's Girls. This is Joel de la Fuente. Joel is also a Drama Desk Award nominee for a one-man show that I saw that was so inspirational, Hold These Truths, which was off Broadway. He's also performed all over New York at the Public Theater, doing a lot of classical theater, Ivanov, played Claudio in Beatrice and Benedict with the New York Philharmonic, and he's currently can be seen on the Netflix original series Hemlock Grove. And last but certainly not least, we have James Saito, Jimmy to his friends. James is also, James has also received an Obie for his work in Durango at the Public Theater. You might recognize him from the ABC TV series Eli Stone, and most recently he was in the film Life of Pi. He'll also be in the upcoming Tim Burton film Big Eyes with Amy Adams. And you might also know him as the Shredder from the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. Yeah. James Saito. All of these martial arts going on. Shredder and Kung Fu.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, you guys are supposed to be playing Asian Americans today. Did you get that memo? So we have a lot of students in the audience, which I'm really excited about. Students from Juilliard and the New School and other places and NYU. So why don't we talk a little bit about how you guys got your start? And what was the first thing that inspired you to say, this is what I want to do? Francis?
I was 12, and I saw my brother in a high school production of The King and I, and he was one of 2 Asian people in the entire cast. It was high school, and as far as I was concerned, every single one on that stage was Siamese. It was beautiful. I was not from a theater-going family, and so this was a very new experience. My brother only did it He played Prince Chula Longcorn because his friends were in the show, and he thought it would be fun to hang out with them. But when I saw him on that stage, I knew that was my calling. It was a religious experience, and being aware that I was watching a white cast, largely, playing Siamese was a part of that spirituality, I think.
How old were you?
I was 12.
I think that so much of, I always loved going to the theater, like as a little kid, like on class trips and when my parents would take me. There's something really magical about the whole experience, but the thing for me was finding ways in my life to get permission, and that continues on to this day, also in my work and stuff, which is that I loved being in the theater, but I never saw anybody that looked like me on stage. I never saw anybody in the movies or on TV that looked like me, and when I did, I kind of wished I hadn't seen them, you know, like there. And
Long Duk Dong from 16 Candles.
yeah, and certainly, and not knocking the performers at all, but just so I guess like for me coming to the stage, like there were a number of kind of happy accidents that seemed to happen one after another, which in hindsight make it look like it was inevitable, because if I'd given myself like this much time to think about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I kind of bumped along and found people along the way and was encouraged in such a way where this inner feeling that I had, this feeling that I loved the theater, I loved acting, I felt it was necessary to do. There are so many things in my life outside of me and also culturally, I think, that made me want to make that secondary. But because of a number of things that happened along the way, it was able to kind of exist long enough to get strong enough to finally, where I just was old enough and I could see for myself that I could make that choice. And I think for so many of us, we're put in situations where we don't make that choice. And even now, like as an actor, I think so much of acting, so much of good acting is putting yourself in a situation where you can give yourself permission to do the stuff that you need to do. So it's not just personally, it's also like as an artist and in your work. It's like finding, I think if you choose to be an actor and you're Asian American, you've already evolved in such a way where you're pretty good at being able to make tough choices. So I think you should think of that as a springboard in your work too, that you're just getting started then. So you've been brave enough to put yourself in a situation. Now you're in a place where you have to be really brave. And I think you should always, it's like, how can we be braver?
That's a really interesting point, Joel. I mean, just that growing up, did you have role models? Who were your role models growing up?
When I have an older brother, there's a big gap. There's like 18-year gap between my oldest brother and myself. I'm the youngest in the family. And my oldest brother, a lot of people call him the original Asian stuntman. Because he was like this, black belt in judo at 16, and he was a wrestler at UCLA. And he was a judo guy, young guy, and he got chosen to row the boat in The King and I, the movie The King and I. That was a long time ago. And he was this big, strong guy. So somebody, he was on that movie for, I guess, a couple of weeks, and somebody noticed him and said, if we need somebody like you, we'll call you up. And the other brothers and sisters in my family, they grew up in Oklahoma, so he could ride a horse, and he could, and he could fight. So he fought with people like Steve McQueen and Sand Pebbles, and he was in James Bond movies and all these things. And so as I was growing up, I saw my brother, in movies, and I saw him on TV, and I guess. I had a totally different experience because it was like, that's my brother. So if he can do it, then when it's like it, he's right there. So You know, I started doing plays and things when I was 12 in school, so 12. And you know, I just did all these plays. And then when I was 20, I got cast in this NBC movie of the week called Farewell to Manzanar, where I was part of this family that is the main family that's put into this relocation camp in Manzanar. And
Wait, that's a pretty big leap, Jimmy. How did you first? Did your brother was your brother in movies, and he sort of?
yeah, well, yeah, he was in. So he. Yeah, so anyway, I saw him, and then you know, when I graduated from high school, I took a year off, and he got me into the extras union. I was an extra. And, you know, I just running up and down the hallway and doing stuff like, you know, sitting in a classroom, and things like that. But he said, because this way, when you work as an actor, you know, I know what it's like to go to a set, to sit, you know, to be there, to hear them clap the thing, you know, speed, action, all that kind of stuff. And so I did that for a year, and then I got with this agent, and then a couple years later, I got that film, and
Was he upset that it was so seemingly easy for you to just?
no, but it was no, because he saw me all the years later, and it wasn't easy after that. So, yeah. You know, it's. I'm telling you, things can start out really easy or seemingly easy, but you really have to work at this business. It's really a challenging business.
It's a lot of hard work. So we got two brothers who were inspirations. Greta, who was your role model?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this question about role models is really interesting. It comes up a lot. I feel like we're always talking about this lack of role models for Asians, Asian women and men. But I think that my experience, I think I was in high school. I mean, I was in middle school when Miss Saigon came out, and there was Lea Salonga. Lucy Liu was killing it, and I mean, she was working and doing well in a commercial field. She was in, I think, Charlie's Angels came out when I was just starting college, and then she did Kill Bill and. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that was when I was in high school, a senior in high school. I remember going to see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon at the theaters and coming home and in the privacy of my bathroom, just spending a really long time testing my martial arts ability and just to see if I can like.
Because it should be
Just
natural
did that
to us,
like
right?
for a
It should
really,
be innate,
really
yeah.
long time, and then eventually got to the point where I was like, oh no, this isn't good. No, oh no, I can't do that. But I feel like early on, I did feel like there were working examples of people, and these Sandra Oh is still working, and I guess this question of role models is always a funny one to me because it's sort of like, how many role models do you need? Like that's a bunch. And the idea that your role model has to look like you.
Right.
I remember graduating from Northwestern and taking these meetings where people would ask, you know, who are your role models and who do you model yourself after? Who do you look up to? You know, and I'd be like, Bill Murray, man. And it was just like silence, like nothing. And just like looking down, like just waiting for me to say someone else, and I'd be like, Jonah Hill, man, right? Comedy, drama, he's got it, and then realizing, oh, okay, like you want me to say Zhang Ziyi or something that would make more sense to you. So, but yeah, I think I didn't know that I wanted to be an actor necessarily. I wanted to be like the next Mariah Carey, you know? I mean, I was just like any kid who, I think this idea of performance in general was something that was kind of exciting and appealing, and I think for so many of us, it wasn't until later on when you realize, oh my God, this thing that I want to do, it's not like interpretive dance. I want to be an actor. And you like try on a whole bunch of things until you realize, you know, what that through line is between all of those things. It's like that performance, the creating and collaborating with people. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because what you've just described, Greta, is also sort of perhaps the process by which we come to know what kind of art we want to practice, and who we are as artists, and what our voice is as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys come to that realization? Did you guys do any professional training programs, or how did you cultivate the craft of being an artist?
I concentrated in theater at Brown University, and then I went to the grad acting program at NYU. When we talk about role models, you know, you're talking about Bill Murray. Like, my role model, you know, when I first really felt passionate about acting was Meryl Streep. I mean, who doesn't love Meryl Streep? And the tradition of her and folks like Kevin Kline, and like, they all cut their teeth in Central Park, you know, like at the Public. So that had such a tremendous sway over me. Just just the magic of doing Shakespeare in the Park, doing it for free, doing Shakespeare in front of people who've never seen a play before, in a multicultural cast, and you're in New York, you're in a diverse community representing the community around you. It just seemed like everything I would have wanted to do, and so much of that tradition. A lot of it funnels through these schools, you know, like Juilliard and NYU and Yale and stuff. Like, a lot of those folks end up going to the Park and stuff. So that was a huge influence for me, you know. And, you know, I kind of want to touch on that too, because you spoke a little bit about, it's like this idea of role models. And I feel like as Asian Americans, we're often put in a situation where race always becomes primary for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
For yourself, or from
as actors,
how other people perceive you?
well, let me speak about it for a little bit. It's like being aware of our race and taking pride in our race and our heritage. It's awesome, it's important, it's great. But everybody else is so interested in my heritage, right? So like, if I'm gonna go in for an audition, all of a sudden everybody's really interested in what my ethnicity is, right? Like, am I really Japanese? And if I'm not Japanese, then should I be playing this part? And I think to myself, I don't think anybody's asking Will Smith that question when he plays so-and-so, or whether
Or
they're-
Meryl Streep. You're like,
or
are you
Meryl
really
Streep
British?
or anybody else. But,
Yeah.
but it's an interesting thing where, like, when we finally get an opportunity, you know, that's like for an Asian American performer, an Asian performer, suddenly it gets further cut down, and we're, you know, 9 times out of 10 we're not allowed to read for things because, well, we're really looking for people who are specifically Japanese. And the people who are casting, who more often than not aren't even Asian or Asian American, they're suddenly the authority on what constitutes a Japanese person, or what constitutes, you know, and then you go and see it, and then it's like a Korean pop star that ends up playing the part. So, like, you know, so I mean, it's we're put in such a weird position, because I feel like, you know, as actors, it's our job, like, if you love acting, like, it's our job to, 2 things. One is to play all kinds of different people, right? And 2 is to find people with, like, tremendous amounts of conflict, right? Flawed people. Those are interesting. Those are you know, conflict is the center of all drama. But then, you know, as Asian Americans, we're put in situations where, one, it's like, you can only play this person or that person. You can play delivery man 4 or, you know, martial arts guy 6. And then, like, if you're flawed in any way, everyone's like, dude, that was such a terrible portrayal of, like, you know, you're just playing some flawed delivery guy. And you're like, but flawed is good. So, you know, you're just put in this terrible situation where, as actors, we look for one thing with a tremendous amount of appetite. But then we're also, the way in which we're allowed to pursue it professionally so often is complicated. You know, it's like...
What I hear you saying, Joel, is that, like, the opportunities for us are already so small that there are only certain roles that we're even allowed to play. And then within that, they become even more streamlined, where, like, if you're not exactly the type of Asian we're looking for, then, you know. So within that, have you guys all found that as well? Like, are there only certain types of roles that you feel like you've been able to go in for, and other roles that you feel like you haven't been able to be seen for as much?
Well, I'm upset that you got that flawed delivery man role because I didn't even get a call.
Because you also
back,
auditioned
so,
for it, yeah.
I heard you were awesome in the callback.
Yeah, thanks, but obviously not awesome enough. So.
Oh, sorry about that.
I mean, if we're talking
There'll be
about-
another one.
If we're talking about the way the world is, that's one thing. But if we're talking about self-actualization, if we're talking about what we can control ourselves, I try as hard as possible not to pay attention to that. I was so lucky. My first professional experience was with an almost entirely Asian American company doing a revival of Pacific Overtures in 1984 in a children's gym where nobody was making any money, and every single person in that room was a committed professional actor. In one way or another, they were making it. And some people were making a living, some people had day jobs, some people had been at it for 40 years, some people had been at it, like me, it was my first gig. And because of that, my very first experience, professional experience, was I was surrounded by all these different Asian American people who were all very, very different, who had different concepts of who they were as people, it was, the early 80s. And everyone had different ideas of who they wanted to be as a performer and how they fit in, and everyone had different skills, different aspirations. And so I'm looking around going, I don't have to pay attention to anybody from the outside telling me that if I'm going to make it in this business, I have to be the best delivery guy possible, or I have to know Cantonese, or I have to be able to be a martial artist. My job is to figure out who I am and what I have in common with anyone I might play. So I think our job is much more about seeing how it's possible for us to be anything and to be the best at those things that we can be, so that when those opportunities come up, we slay them, and not worry about what
Like the
anybody else
politics
thinks.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like it's easy to fall into getting involved with the like political aspect of like, oh, they're never gonna cast me because I'm Asian, and like because there's already an Asian person, or there's two black guys and one Latino. Oh God, like, and you
Only one
and
Asian
you-
allowed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you sort of decide, for them before you've even entered the room,
Right.
and also I would like to say, I really feel like things have changed for the better. I really feel like I feel lucky that I think that there is a lot of opportunity out there.
When I graduated from the Yale School of Drama a little bit more than 10 years ago, there was only one Asian man on primetime TV, and that was B.D. Wong in SVU, a major character on primetime TV, and that was before Lost started. And that first pilot season, I had like 4 auditions, all of where I was playing a drag queen, and that was such a weird first year for me, a first experience for me. But I think what you're saying, Greta, is that like you can sometimes psych yourself out.
Yeah.
If you have to go in there, as you're saying, Francis, believing that I am the best person for this role, regardless of.
Yeah, I was so tired of playing drag queens. A few years ago, when a playwright called me and said, I've got this great part, I really want you to read, we're doing a 2-week workshop, and you'd be playing a Filipina transgender migrant worker in Tel Aviv. And
You're like, again?
And I'm like, oh, yeah, exactly. Like, it's so hard being a girl. And and then I read the part, and it was a completely, fully realized human being who I realized I don't really understand, but I identify with in some way. And after doing a few workshops of it, I did get a chance to play the part in a production, and lo and behold, it's one of the things I am most proud of. Not for any other reason than I think I really understand her, and I identify with her, and I took great pride in people coming to see it and realizing that they were on her side, instead of thinking of her as this odd, weird creature, immigrant, migrant worker, horrible. Which were all the reactions I had been having. So that's, I think the question is, when we get upset about casting and stereotyping, is that helpful? Yeah. And if not, how can we make it helpful? By working on ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, Francis and Greta, what they do, I think what you guys are talking about, you're in it, hopefully, ideally, for the long haul. Like, this is a life choice you're making, and hopefully you will spend your entire lives acting, or in this business. And so you have to find ways of, when you think about it that way, you have to find ways of taking care of yourself and getting yourself ready for a long race. Jimmy alluded to it earlier. It's like, there are spikes sometimes where we work a lot, then there could be stretches where you don't. And if you're doing this long enough, that's how it goes. Like, you go through long periods where you don't work. I think what Greta and Francis said earlier, it's so important that, because the politics of it and the issues that I was talking about earlier, these things are perpetual. They're always there. You will struggle with them. But you have to find the ways where you can take care of yourself and when you can differentiate between what you have control over and what you don't have control over. And sometimes when you're doing well and you have a good sense of that, you can do what Francis, I've seen him in action for a while, and he does such a beautiful job of taking control over the things that he can take control over and keeping a really clear perspective on how do I make myself a better actor? Because ideally, you choose this life not to kvetch over the politics of it, but because you're trying to make yourself the best actor you can be, because you are committed to the craft of acting. And and the more you can keep it about that, see, that's something you can understand. That's something that you're passionate about. That's something you can actually do. And while you could be passionate and articulate about the politics of things and concerned about those things politically, they're separate kind of things. And for me, I know it's been an interesting kind of dilemma between being passionate in that regard, and then I have to put it aside when it comes time to act, because more often than not, that just gets in my way as an actor. It shuts me down. There's a lot of no's in there, not a lot of yeses. It stymies my impulses. So it's just, it's that whole kind of thing where that schizophrenia, of you being an intellectual and then being an artist, or being, what it is to be an Asian American, largely. It's like, that kind of, always being on the outside, trying to get inside, that kind of thing.
Always being on the outside, trying to get inside. That's really poignant to me. I mean, it feels like that's sort of the experience that a lot of people who are a minority in this country feel, that they're on the outside, trying to get inside.
You feel like you're on the inside, but when people look at you, you feel like they're putting you on the outside sometimes,
Yeah. And we should talk about some of the challenges that are specific to Asian Americans. But before we do that, I don't want to leave sort of Greta's point, which is that this is a fantastic, exciting time to be an Asian American actor, actually. I mean, going from what I was talking about when there was only one actor on primetime TV who was Asian to now it seems like so many shows have Asians on them. I mean, James, you have been a SAG actor since 1975. You've probably seen the shift. in your lifetime. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how has that affected you as an actor? Were there times when you felt like there were just no roles out there, that people weren't knocking on your door, that you were
I
only
feel that all the time.
yeah, you still feel that way.
Nobody's knocking
What
on my
actor-
door.
yeah.
And yet you're never not working.
You know, I have hobbies. Yeah, well, you know, in the beginning, it was just, yeah, it was like, I remember, because I started in LA, I remember I would drive to an audition, and I would know the 5 people who were going to be there. Yeah? It's always the same 5 guys, you know, hey Clyde, hey Richard, you know, it's like, and it's, you're always, but now, there's, you know, there's people, there's so many actors. And, but also, I remember, you know, in the 70s and 80s, like, I was, you know, I was very grateful that there were wars, because so many, I played so many soldiers, you know, World War II, Korean War, you know, anyway, there were all these, I was fighting, I would speak Vietnamese, anything, you know, I was like, I was fighting all the time, but, you know, I was working, and so I did a lot of that, and, but, you know, nowadays, yeah, there are just so many more roles, and it's really nice because the roles that were written back when I started and through much of my career, you know, you're always serving a purpose. You're on the, you know, you're this second, third, you know, you're a peripheral character who's just serving a purpose. But now, you know, a lot of the roles that they're writing are real people, and it's so nice to be able to do that instead of just filling a space.
So I think it's also important, at least for me personally, there are more roles, there are more Asian roles for sure, but they're also, we don't have to wait for the Asian ones, you know? Like, I think that what is so exciting to me right now, when I feel like there's just more out there, it's not so much like, oh my God, there are more computer nerds everywhere, you guys. Like, it's like, it's more that, you know, you can say no. You can say, I don't want to be a nurse technician. And I would like to go in for the role that was written for the larger black lady, which it sounds, like, all joking aside, I did a movie where it was written for a larger black lady, and I wanted to be seen for it, and, you know, it's just getting into the room, and I think that the climate right now, no one's trying to make a show only for white people. Like, no one's like, I only want white people to watch this show. I think that people are actively searching for diversity, and so...
In fact, just a little statistic, UCLA did a recent study where the movies that had the most diverse casts last year also happened to be the most successful movies.
Yeah.
And now, you know, with the importance of the international movie audience, I think that's true.
Yeah.
That no one wants to create a movie that's only for a small section of people.
Yeah, and it can feel really scary, I think, to keep saying no to your agents or to your manager, whoever, and saying like, oh no, I just, you know, I feel like I've seen that role. It seems stereotypical. I want to go for something else, and you know, long stretches can go by feeling kind of poor and a little bit more desperate. Like maybe that ninja role looks kind of okay, but I think holding out has really seemed to pay off for a lot of my peers and for myself, and I think that that's just speaks to more of what the world is like today. I think people do want to see, it's, you know, I don't know the statistics for Asian Americans, just numbers-wise, what our population is, but there are more of us. So it's less of a shock.
We're the
to have.
largest growing population, largest group,
Yeah.
not just minority, but the largest group in America.
Yeah.
There's like twice as many people in here now than there were when we started, in fact. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
You breed rapidly. But talk a little bit more about that, Greta, because I find that so inspirational. So what was the process by which you said, no, I want to go in for the big, black lady role? Was that what it was called? The character was Big Black Lady?
Big black lady role, yeah.
Was that a conversation you had with your manager? And
Yeah, I think from the beginning it was something that I really had to be bullheaded about and like annoying about. Just constantly fighting that and reminding them like, I don't want, what else? What else is out there? And this is years ago, just starting out really. I think I was thrilled to do Spelling Bee on Broadway, and Deborah Craig, who's a dear, dear friend of mine, originated this role. It was the first, we love Deborah, the first Korean American role on Broadway. So cool, and to be a part of that, and we got to close that show on Broadway. I mean, that was so exciting. That was my first professional job after Northwestern, and but it was very confusing because I sort of thought like, yeah, now what? And was very surprised that, okay, so there's nothing else? Like what, I'm only gonna play really academic, shy, uptight, type A Asian people? And then it soon became...
Or there's also dragon ladies.
Or sexy.
Yes, exactly,
yes.
yeah.
The pendulum for the ladies, it's like you're either like really buttoned up or you are a sex worker. There's like nothing in between.
There's no in between.
Yeah, but that was really upsetting and difficult, really, really difficult. And I wasn't getting those roles, nurse practitioner, computer. My face moves too much for those like stone cold, Asian like, no, I have no feelings. Like no, later. Where's the research papers?
Less,
like
Greta,
I'm
less.
science. Yeah, less, even smaller.
That's better.
Sorry, I can't do it. So eventually, the feeling was mutual, is what I'm trying to say. Like, all that crouching tiger in the mirror, like, they didn't want me either, because, it's just, that's not me, I'm a California chick who sounds, sometimes a little bit California, and I think that it took a long time and a lot of patience to accept that I think just being yourself, as cheesy as that sounds, like, ultimately, I wish I could have told myself that. I would have saved myself so much time and grief if I could have just said, like, don't try to be, I don't know, like the Asian Natalie Portman, which I don't even know what that is, but like the ingenue, the soft, or whatever. We all have like preconceived notions of who we are, what kind of career we should have, and if I do this and this, then I will be successful and happy.
But the problem becomes with what Joel was talking about, being on the outside in. It's sort of like, it's great to know who you are, but how do you convince other people that to see you for who you are beyond, to be able to transcend your race? Mm-hmm. Have you guys had that conversation as well? Sort of like, look, this is who I really am with your agents and managers, and I want you to send me out for these type of people, not necessarily, even regardless of whether it says Asian or not?
You got to walk the walk. If you really believe that you are a leading man, then you better have the skills. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you look like. You just have to have the skills. So if I say I want to go out for this, Chinese opera master who's Bruce Lee's father, I better be able to put out. That's all. Just work on yourself. Be hard on yourself so that you can be most genuinely yourself. And I don't mean that means you only play who you are that you present in everyday life. I mean that when you say you're an actor and you say, I can do these kinds of roles, you've got to be tough on yourself and evaluate yourself and know yourself well enough to know where you need help and get it when you can.
See, I think that's where it comes back to permission again, which is that, because all the things that we're talking about right now about like these these obstacles that we face or that we perceive, or these things that are working against us as Asian American actors and stuff. These are things that keep us from giving ourselves, from feeling free to do our work. It's one more series of obstacles. All actors, we all have them. And it just, they're physical obstacles. We get tense. We get, our faces move too much, or whatever it is. And this whole Asian American conversation is potentially a huge conflict. I mean, just a huge obstacle that gets in our way as actors to do our work. And I'm not saying that being Asian American is an obstacle. I'm saying if we think about it in a particular way, it can just get in our way. How do we find out who we are, include that part of it? How do we pursue our knowing ourselves, as Francis says, cultivate that, all the different parts of ourselves, and then be able to go into a room and be present? Because I think what Greta says is so awesome, which is that if you have that mindset where you think, and she's right, people aren't sitting there like for your audition thinking, here comes another, here's somebody that we don't want to see. They want you to be that person. They really want you to be the person that they can cast so their job can be over. They want you to make it easy for them. They want you to be awesome. They want you to surprise them. Well, how are you going to surprise them if you're putting yourself in the same box that, a whole bunch of other people are putting you into? If you're not, so, there was an audition. They get harder and harder. Auditions get harder and harder to kind of say yes or say no to for me, because before, like when I first started acting, like the offensive ones were really easy. Like you'd see them, you'd be like, oh my God, that's so offensive. No, thank you. But now, like it's a little more. Now it's a little trickier, right? You're like, well, is that offensive? I'm not sure, because, and I think that's progress. I don't know, but so, I got this audition like within the last year, and I just thought, oh my God. Like I wasn't even upset. I just was like, wow, that's crazy. No. And so then I was talking to this wonderful actress named Sakina Jaffrey, who is on House of Cards, which is its own amazing, excellent story, because she talks about how everyone's asking her why she's an overnight success, and really she's like, this overnight success has been at it for 30 years, basically. But so I was talking to Sakina about it. She said, have you been auditioning much? And I said, well, there was this incredibly offensive audition, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, tell me about it. So I told her about it, and so she said, what'd you do? I said, well, I passed. And she said, why'd you pass? I said, because it was so offensive. And she said, who says it's offensive? I said, I did. I just told you it was offensive. She's like, well, who's going to do that part? And I said, well, somebody's going to do that part. And she said, well, why don't you go in and see? I mean, why don't you even see for yourself? Like, what do you have to bring to that? And I said, because, and she said, because you're scared? Because you're scared you might offend people? Or you're scared that you can't do it? Or what is it about that? And I thought to myself, there are a gazillion other auditions like this that are more complicated, where I go in, where it's not so black and white offensive, but I'm apologizing for it the second I walk in the room because of whatever else. And so I might as well not even go to the audition. Like I'll do a half-assed job. I think I'm doing a great job, but I walk out thinking I haven't expressed myself. And here was a fully realized version, like a fully, where I am afraid to embody the person that I see on that page. So I said, that's you're right. So I called my agent. I said, can I get that audition? Can I get an appointment for that? Can I get that back? And they were like, okay. And I said, just give me a couple days as lasers are going so I can try to prepare it. And so I went in, and I had a couple days, so I couldn't use, I didn't have time to prepare. So I actually had time to prepare. And I went in, and my entire mindset for the audition was just, I'm going all the way, baby. I'm going all the way. And I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to celebrate going all the way. Whatever happens, whatever. But I know I'm prepared. I know the things that I'm trying to accomplish in this. And I don't even care if I get the job. In fact, I sort of hope I don't get the job because I'm going all the way, baby. And it was the most liberating experience. I mean, I might have totally sucked ass. I don't know. But I felt great about it. I felt great because I was able to go in there and do what I wanted to do, make really big choices, kind of own it, so that next time it's kind of like I just kind of pushed it out a little further, and I saw where I was a little bit further, so that the next time when maybe it's this far, I can kind of sit in it a little more comfortably, and I can bring something where hopefully, because if you can bring yourself to anything, unexpected things happen. Because like the best jobs I think that we've all had, it's like when you see them on paper, you didn't know it was going to be a great job. Or it's like what you were talking about with Francis with the Tel Aviv
Paper
job,
dolls,
with paper
yeah.
dolls. Like we're such experts before we even do anything. Like we think we know the answer to everything, and we have to because we feel that way because we have to protect ourselves for a million different reasons. But if you can put yourself in a situation like that, then you get you put yourself in you give yourself an opportunity to exceed yourself, to grow as an actor, to learn something, and maybe possibly to do some pretty good work.
Joel, just want to clarify, when you say you went all the way, was that all the way in pursuit of that
How you mean go all the
offensiveness?
way?
Okay.
How offensive can you be?
Okay. Or was it going in to give them a completely different take on the role where they
No,
could be,
no, not a different take. I went all the way.
All right. With accent. Okay.
I think we all know what we mean when I say I go all the way.
Just want to be clear. Okay.
That's a really good point, though, because there's been a lot of controversy recently about accents and speaking other languages on stage. And I was just confronted by some students who their school was doing Thoroughly Modern Millie. And there were certain teachers and certain parents who thought that the henchmen in Millie were offensive. And they thought they were offensive because they were menial laborers and they spoke in Cantonese.
This is a role that Francis originated on Broadway.
And I'm like, I thought so too when I was first offered the part. Like, how is this not just being a coolie? And then I became convinced that coolies are people too. That people who do menial labor are people too. That people with accents, people who speak other languages are people too. So as long as these people in the show have a stake in the show, why not present them and blow
As
people's
three-dimensional.
minds
Right.
as three-dimensional characters? And as it turns out that they had the same aspirations as every other person in that show who was coming to New York.
Well, I
reinvent
want to
their
talk
lives.
about that a little bit because that's a really good indication of how much society has changed. First of all, I think it's important to point out that Thoroughly Modern Millie is a fairly recent show. It was 2002, right? Or 2001? 2002? But of course, it was based on source material that was from 1967.
God, Pun, you're so good.
I do my research when I have to
That was
deal with,
unbelievable.
I know I'm moderating such an excellent, esteemed panel. But so that was legitimized. It won the Tony Award, that year, and has gone on to do countless productions. And it's only sort of now that with these high school productions that, it was canceled, I think, at the Dalton School here in New York.
Yep.
It raised a huge uproar amongst the Asian American community in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and where I'm not sure. Yes, I think you can create a three-dimensional character who is a coolie. From what I understand, is that there are, this increasingly growing demographic in America is now saying, look, we are sick and tired of seeing ourselves as coolies all the time, right? That, you go see Anything Goes, it's coolies again. You have to go all the way to like spelling bee to see like a positive Asian character or what have you, and that there aren't as many representations of positive Asian characters in musical theater.
Mickey
That's
Rooney
sort of
passed away today, and the first thing I thought was his portrayal in Breakfast at
Breakfast at
Tiffany's.
Tiffany's, yeah.
Positive portrayals. One of the guys in Millie gets the girl. The other guy gets the job and brings his mother over from China, which is his goal from the top of the show. They are the ones who actually revealed, who foil the bad person in the show, and so everybody wins. So Asian American heroes who happen to be menial laborers. I think that, yes, Millie can be a completely racist show if that's the way it's directed and played. And I don't know how it was received when I did it necessarily, but when what I intended was to portray somebody who was an immigrant, who was misguided to begin with, and then changed his mind, helped his brother get the girl, and saved the day.
Right.
So, you know, that's our job, to go all the way.
But what I want to bring up, though, is that, like, you know, that it's not just early modern Millie, but it's sort of indicative of, you know, all of us have had to play roles where we've had to put on accents, I think. You know, is that true, everybody here?
Yeah.
Greta, have you?
California accent.
Right.
No, yes, sure.
And that's one of the things that I've noticed as a change, is that a lot of the roles that I go out for now require less and less of an Asian accent, which is such a great positive thing. But still, like, a lot of the representations of Asians out there, whether it's in stage, TV, film, really is this sort of othering process where we are still considered the foreigner, I think. That's sort of just my opinion. What do you guys think?
I mean, are we talking stage specifically now?
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, if we were to talk about the stage, because I feel like stage work, in terms of diversity in Asians, I actually think that it's a little behind. Like, I really feel like my experience in being able to do both, it's a little bit of a surprise still. I mean, to me, I think New York City, I mean, I love this city, it's my home, but it is, I feel like it's weird that, I mean, sure, we're talking about, it's almost like we're talking about the Asian roles are less offensive now, guys, when really, I feel like, let's go further and say, what about the roles where she doesn't have to be Asian, where it's not brought up that she's Asian, like, right. And I do really feel like, unfortunately, for whatever reason, the roles that we see are still pretty stereotypical. I feel now, you know, I feel nervous saying this because I got to be a part of like 4,000 Miles at Lincoln Center, and I played a Chinese American. I loved that play. I loved working on that play. It was amazing, and it actually ended up, this character has one scene in this whole play. And it was one of those jobs where I thought, like, this is, you know, who cares? But Lena Dunham came to see me in that play, and that's how she ended up writing something for me on Girls, which was, like, crazy. And I felt like that is something that, you know, doesn't really actually happen. But doing that play, I had so many complicated feelings because, on the one hand, yes, it's so cool that it's like, this character, I'm part of the mainstream. This sort, like, you know what I mean? Like Amy Herzog, like people are coming to see this play, people care. But it was crucial story-wise for her to be Chinese American, because they get into this fight about how, you know, her grandmother was communist, and you know, it's a part, and I can see some of you guys nodding your heads, maybe you know the scene. I feel like at schools now, people are working on this particular scene. It's a good scene, it's super fun. But it's surprising that there's not, you get to this point and you realize, oh, for me to be able to do a play, a straight play that's part of the mainstream of Broadway or off-Broadway with the people that I'm excited about working with, if I'm gonna be there, I will be lucky to be there at all, and if I am, I'm gonna be part of the B story. I'm gonna be there because the son of the nucleus of the family has wandered off to a bar and like met me. Crazy Asian me, you know, and like, or you know, someone gets a divorce and the new wife is Asian, or I mean, really, and it's weird because I feel uncomfortable. I feel like this is I don't talk about this often because it is exciting to be a part of New York theater and, you know, working Lincoln Center, the Public, you know, these places on Broadway. But there's still work to be done. But again, like we've been saying,
I'll give you,
it's
you know,
not.
a statistic
Yeah.
from what you were saying.
You're so good with the numbers.
He doesn't
I'm
have a
Asian.
pad of paper or anything. It's all.
But I actually started a group called the Asian American Performers Action Coalition, and we actually we're the only group that does publicly available statistics on ethnic representation on New York City stages, and the numbers are really daunting, actually. And I know we have such a positive panel. We've only been talking about positive things, but I think it is important to talk about the realities of the situation, the landscape. And the fact is that, you know, for the last year that we have statistics out was the 2011-2012 season. And in New York City, Asian actors only represented on Broadway 3% of all roles, and in the not-for-profit sector, 2% of all roles. So across the entire industry, we were only represented at like 2.5%. In a city with 13% Asian Americans. So, so I'd love to talk about that. You know, one of the reasons why I started APAC was because I was inspired by people like you guys, Obie Award-winning, Drama Desk Award-winning actors who were, you know, I was finding out, you know, had never auditioned for Lincoln Center or for the Roundabout or MTC or whatever, like these mainstream New York City institutions. And so, Jimmy, you've been around the longest. So, tell us sort of why do you think that has happened? Because you were part of the original wave of Asian American theater artists who sort of went and did stuff, you know, Pan Asian Rep and, you know, Mai and all of these sort of independent Asian theater companies that sort of started on the outskirts, on the fringes. You know, that was sort of the initial movement in the 60s. And now it's sort of moved to be like, no, like we deserve to be in the mainstream. What was that experience like for you as an actor during that period? And what's it like now for you?
At the time, because I started at the East West Players in LA, and it was, I used to call it was like the only game in town. You know, I graduated from UCLA, and I knew Mako, who ran that theater, and it, you know, because they were doing Asian plays, I could play the angry young man, or I could play, you know, I could be a part of the family, and that's what the story is about. Whereas in any other theater, you're playing the, you know, the butler or whatever, and so that's where I was able to do a bunch of plays, and then when I moved here to New York. Yeah, I looked up places like Pan Asian, and Mai had started, and Natco had started. So it was like, I looked at those places as some place that at least I could go and work on real people. Because there, you know, and at that time there weren't a lot of opportunities where the other theaters were open to saying, well, let's cast an Asian guy. So it was a place to sort of work out.
Well, I think in mentioning the Asian American theater, I feel like for me, just in terms of the response to, because we're going to figure this out right now. We're going to solve this right now, right?
Done.
Yeah.
Put a fork in it.
Yeah, we're going to figure it out. No, I think that the response sometimes, because I feel like I just complained a lot about there not being a lot of Asian roles on stage, but I feel like I have to add, though, that I'm equally as sort of like nervous and conflicted over the frequent response to the lack of the statistics and like how nuts that is. But then on the other hand, I feel like so often you see then, you know, Asian writers and actors saying, well, okay, like, we need more Asian plays. We need more Asian writers, we need more Asian actors, and more Asian plays, and more Asian plays about being Asian. Asian plays about the Asian experience, about being Asian and how hard it is. I'm Asian identity, and it just, I'm just as sort of uncomfortable with that, because it's like, you know, as an actor, if like you were only dealing with stories that had to do with you being like a basket weaver every time, you know, and how they're the worst basket weaving plays, but like how unsatisfying that would be, and like, and just what is the potential solution? I don't know. Is it just more Asian plays? I mean,
well, I think, you know, The Godfather is considered one of the greatest American films ever made, one of the greatest films ever made. And you don't get too many people saying, oh, but the portrayal of Italian and Italian Americans, I mean, you get some now, but pretty much people can appreciate those characters as being flawed, amazing film, blah, blah, blah. Why? Why? Because the people that are watching this film, the people that made this film, you see Italian and Italian Americans everywhere, in every capacity, top to bottom, in this country, as assimilated. So just because you see Vito Corleone, you don't think that the guy right here is, you know, because there's an Italian that babysits your children. There's Joe DiMaggio over here, who's a prominent figure in Ernest Hemingway's, you know, Old Man and the Sea, who's, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, they're just a part of the fabric of our country. So what is the solution here? Is, you know, I think we just need to create, you know, like, and whether it's a play about an Asian American experience, yeah, do that. Whether it's someone with an accent, yeah, do that. Whether it's just, you know, the amazing thing, I've just been working up in Toronto lately, where it's part of the government, like, it's public policy. Multiculturalism is public policy in Canada. They're committed to it. So you go up there, and yes, it's diverse, but it's diverse in this weird way. Like, you go up there, and like, they're all hanging out talking about the same shit, you know, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. You know, they have a common experience, and nobody, you know, race is not a separator the same way that it is here. I mean, yes, it is in some ways, but there's a significant difference, because the government has said, we're all included, we're all in this together, we're committed to it. So that starts to filter down, so that when you talk about a Canadian story, and you look, turn on the TV, like Orphan Black, they shoot that in Canada. I don't know if you guys watch that, but turn it on and look at the characters that are on that show, and you're like, they're people of all these different colors and hues, not just like black, maybe kind of half black, maybe half Asian, or there's an Asian woman in the background or whatever, but there's no reference made to any of this. They're just part of the same world. So let's get some of that too. We'll just keep creating, keep doing stuff, and gradually, the more that, you know, the more of you who are acting get out there, the more of you who are writing and write things from whatever your experience may be, the more of us pursue our own pursuit of individual excellence over what we do and finding things, we will slowly start to populate our world, so that, you know, like someday, you know, I think Getty Watanabe in 16 Candles, I think his performance as Long Duck Dong is freaking hilarious. Like, it's a great performance. Did I see so many kids my age get their asses kicked because of that movie? Yeah, I did. Was I ashamed of it when I saw it in a movie theater? Yeah, I was. In 50 years, maybe people will watch that movie and it'll be different, because there'll be like, you know, maybe there'll be so many different things we can appreciate the things in that performance without being, you know, because that's the only Asian guy that people in a huge swath of America will see that year.
I want to frame the conversation a little bit, because I feel like both of you, both Greta and Joel, are sort of saying similar things. On the one hand, you know, Greta, you're saying, why does it, I don't just want to do Asian American plays or Asian American stories. And what I found really profound about what you were saying, Joel, is that look at The Godfather, that's not just an Italian story, that's called a great American film. But somehow we've gotten lost in this divide because of the system that we operate in. There's the Asian American theater, or there might be a major regional theater that that decides to have one slot be the ethnic play. It's always sort of this othering process of why can't these Asian American stories be considered universal American stories? What is preventing us from getting to that place right now?
Well, but I feel like, okay, so in terms of The Sopranos, yes, they were Italian, but I think, yes, it's true that we are more accustomed to seeing Italian Americans, and so it's not at the forefront of our experience when we're watching The Sopranos. But I will say that show is incredible, and they're Italian, and they're also not stepping into the stereotypes of being Italian. It doesn't seem like they're like, we're Italian, like pizza, mozzarella, like Italian. Right. Where I do feel like that's certainly, I'm not saying that that's the case with Asian American theater at all, but I do feel like sometimes I think that there could be more of an attempt to do less of a us versus them and more of a like reaching across and sort of opening up in maybe new and uncomfortable ways.
It's tough for some people to look at people like us and see someone who they could be like first, because they're so focused on the fact that we represent something other than them. And we haven't had our raisin in the sun, where it's just a family. And it doesn't have Beijing opera in it, and it doesn't have drag queens in it, and it's something that anyone with a heart and a soul can identify with. We haven't had that play, that cultural moment where an Asian American family story is identified with in that way. But
is it because we haven't had the play? What about Joy Luck Club? Or is it because of the reception?
It's still considered exotic and other and mysterious. And I think, too, we look at ourselves that way. When we look at Asian American theater, when we create Asian American theater, sometimes we get caught in the hamster wheel of this is about an Asian American experience as opposed to a human experience.
A lot of it is funding dollars. It's deeper. Like if you're going to get your slice of the pie to keep on putting theater, like why are they going to give you money? Well, because we have dragons in it. Because we have these,
I feel like we can give people more credit now.
You mean audiences?
Audiences, what people want to see. I don't think people want to see more plays about dragons. Maybe they do. Funding-wise, I think that, again, it is easier for us to fall into, oh man, but they don't recognize us, I do think it's so easy to slide into this us versus them, and I can only speak about my own experience. I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I'm finding that I think we can give people more credit for what audiences are willing to take on. Mm-hmm. With TV, the landscape of TV has changed so much. Audiences are smarter.
When you say we, who's the we? Because are you talking about us as actors, or are you talking about the executives and the producers that choose what material is done?
I'm saying let's not worry about those executives. Let's not worry about the CEOs, the head of NBC, the head of, the public, let's not worry about, and I'm saying we as a community of creators, of writers and actors, of like,
Let's worry about how we see ourselves.
yeah,
Are we challenging ourselves enough?
Yeah, because I think ideally everyone would like to think that we live in a system where you should be able to create the story that speaks to you, do the work on yourself, and ideally the best actor should get the role regardless of race. And we are, we are seeing a movement in a positive direction, particularly in TV. A lot of them are owned by, this goes to your point, Joel, about funding and who owns the money. A lot of these TV executives a lot of these TV companies are owned by major conglomerates who have major diversity initiatives. All of the primetime networks have, a great diversity initiative, and things have changed because of that. You don't necessarily see that shift yet to the same extent in film, certainly not in theater, but even in film. Let's talk a little bit about why we don't have an Asian American bankable star necessarily. Or maybe we do. I guess that's a question. And then also the extent of whitewashing that is happening in Hollywood right now. Where you have these sort of Asian specific stories like the Last Airbender, which was based on a Nickelodeon. Say that again?
Whitewashing on stage.
Whitewashing on stage as well, exactly. Where you have white bankable stars coming in to sort of to take over what was originally an Asian story. How do you guys feel about that when you hear, casting news like?
If creatives want to be creative, they have to be able to cast and conceive the shows as they see fit. If I want to be creative, then I'll have that decision-making power. But at the point where, and this is when I have stepped up to be political, at the point where people respond to their work, questioning their choices, and they say that they didn't think that they could tell a universal story using Asian actors, then I have to step up and say that that's bullshit. Because I don't look at the Crucible and think that it's only about crazy-ass Bostonians in the 17th century. So, if you want to do something in the Forbidden City and cast it with white people, or, a Benetton ad of a cast, then great. Go with God and see what the audience says. But then everyone who goes to see it has the right to have their subjective experience of that as well, And when I think about how I'd like the world to be, I think I would like I would like my body to be able to do high kicks still. I'd like my voice to be able to sing this way. And that's what I'm going to focus on and let the creatives do their job.
I just want more choice. As a viewer, so much of what we're seeing is the same, and there's so much more room there's just room for more stories. Like, we don't need 50 of the same story, maybe 4 or 5 of the same story, but then how about just more choices, and so, to take Francis's point of view, then instead of sitting around and waiting for someone to make that for me, then maybe I should try to make one of those stories, and
Yeah.
And I do think that that's kind of our it's our responsibility, and it's also a deeply valuable and enriching experience to try to create your own work. And there's so many different ways that you can. You don't have to sit down and write it and produce it, but you can. But you can collaborate with your friends. The hard thing about acting is that we can't do this by ourselves. You can't act by yourself. You can, but then, look what happened when she was in the bathroom. It's a disaster. right?
But you can't. All it takes is calling up your friends and getting together in a living room and reading a play.
Yeah, that's how great things get
Every
started.
day,
Yeah.
right?
So I just love that. I love the idea of personal responsibility, because everything that we're talking about here is so valid, and there's nothing better than getting together too and just talking about common problems that we have. But I don't think we should ever lose sight of the fact that you always do have that you are personally responsible on some level for things. And
You have the power.
It starts with you. It starts with creating your own work. And that's one of the reasons why I love groups like National Asian American Theater Company and MAYI and stuff, which they're companies that got together when there was no opportunity, and they created opportunity. Like, I've had an artistic home at NATCO and MAYI, but particularly NATCO. They do, like, Western plays, like stuff that, we trained with in acting school and stuff that you can't, if you can't, where else was I going to get to play Ivanov, like in Ivanov? And I got to do it there. And that's not an Asian or Asian American story. That is a Western play, a very challenging play, to be sure. But those challenges were mine as an actor, period, having nothing to do with anything else. And that's how you get better, because that's one of the challenging things, is when there's a dearth of opportunity for you as actors, when you can't ply your craft, when you can't work, then how do you get better? And then when you are working, but you're playing a bunch of roles where you're not being challenged acting-wise, you're not being challenged, you're not working a long period of time, you're not playing a particularly challenging part, you should do your best to try to make it, as an enriching experience as possible. But let's be honest, that if you're playing, if like you're a day player on, say, like SVU or something like that, you can't make it too enriching because it's not going to hold up. They don't want it to be too. They don't want to pay too much attention to you. If you're going to do your job right, then it almost means that they're not paying attention to you to a certain degree. That's your job. So how do you get better? Well, you got to find some great material to do, and you got to do it.
I did Fiddler on the Roof in college, and they had a professional director and choreographer who mounted the show with students, and I was both a Cossack and a Jew, so I got to dance the bottle dance and then do a quick change and then come in and break up the wedding as a Russian, and I was the only person of color in the company, and that directing, choreographing team asked a friend of theirs named Bjork Lee to come see the show, and specifically because I was in the show. And she came backstage and she said, "Hey kid, you're gonna go in this business, right?" And I said, "No, I don't know. I mean, I'm doing Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, in the real world, would I be given this opportunity?" And she said something I will never forget. She said, "You don't belong in this business unless deep down in your heart, that secret part of you, you believe that talent will out. You have to believe, one, that you do have something special, and two, that if you just keep working at it, if you just keep trying to get better, that somebody will notice at some point, if you just keep doing it." And as frustrated as I do get sometimes, because I can't control the reality around, I have to believe that each one of you and everyone else on this panel has something really special. And if they just believe strongly enough that talent will out, something will happen.
Just believe, meaning doing all of the things that you're talking about,
Yes.
which is taking responsibility,
Yeah.
getting back up again, finding ways, trying to find your way around, and then be stymied, and then try again, and then make a mistake, and then try again, and then be ridiculously offensive by mistake, and then try again, whatever it takes.
I feel like also in comedy specifically, I mean, when we talk about, being the best that we can and being prepared on the day and making the most out of opportunities, I would love to see more Asian people at improv theaters, at doing sketch, doing improvising, on a house team and on a practice team, taking classes. And I guess I still, I still feel like we could be out there more, and put ourselves in those sort of uncomfortable situations. Trying stand up. It took.
So great at that.
Oh no, I know for a fact that but that's what I mean. Like I feel like I wanted to. It was weird. I just felt like there weren't that many Asians at comedy places, at at UCB, at the Magnet. There were like just a few select token people, and kind of was like, where is everyone? And I think that when we're talking about like doing whatever we can, it's like, yeah, getting together with friends and writing. Oh my God, writing. It's hearing someone say, well, just write. It's like the equivalent of like, just eat your peas and carrots and do your homework and write. I mean, sometimes it feels like the worst, most annoying thing. You hear all these stories about making your own opportunities. I feel like the first screenplay I attempted to write, it was literally called I Don't Want To. But that's so important. Thinking about, man, I'm so pissed off that I can't play this type. Well, then, like, write it and have your friends shoot it, and let it be a short. Like these days, it's amazing. I don't know if you guys watch Broad City. Broad City on Comedy Central. Amy Poehler's a producer. It's a hit show. It's two girls who are in their 20s. They were a sketch duo at UCB, doing their thing. There's so much viral activity now. There's just so many more outlets, and less excuses for us to feel upset that we don't have more opportunities. So.
And actually, there are a lot of Asian American YouTube stars, actually. I mean, that's all of a sudden, it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's worth putting out there because you were saying what are some parts you want to play or what are things that you don't get to play. It's so important. Like it's so important and easy to let ourselves off the hook with and not be specific with ourselves. Like what do you want? Like what do you want to play? Like at least 3 times over the last 6 months, I have been asked point blank, what part do you want to play? And I don't have an answer. Like, it's really weird, and I should have an answer. And you should have an answer. It doesn't have to be the answer, but you should have an answer. You should know specifically what it is that you want to do this week, this month, this year, maybe over the next 5 years. And it doesn't have to be paralyzing because it has to be the be-all and end-all, but we should have specific answers because otherwise we're just reacting to everything around us. I don't want to play that. Oh, that's so offensive. Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think about that. Or, Sopranos is just about this or that. And we should know what we want to do and be proactive about those things and create those things and just start moving in that direction, that creative way, instead of a reactive way.
It's like a therapy term to respond and not react.
Right.
Is there any
feedback model.
But
Feedback what you're
like,
hearing.
sorry, I just thought of how that's totally applicable to, as artists. I don't know, like we're so quick to react so strongly to things, and oftentimes a negative way. Okay, I'll stop. I don't know.
Well, you're right. I mean, a lot of the creative impulse is about reacting, as opposed to what Joel is saying. I mean, like it is important to strategize as well. What am I good at? What are the roles I want to play?
Can I tell you the story about how I got the job that I'm working on now?
Yeah.
So I'm working on this show right now called Hemlock Grove, which is the show on Netflix. And I play a character named Johan Price. So he wasn't conceived as an Asian or Asian American guy. In fact, there's it's a novel, but then there's like a prequel kind of graphic novel in which he's portrayed, and he's like this 6'5" like Nordic dude. But so what happened was, and it's a great job. It's like it's a lot of fun to work on, and it's a great, interesting part. So like a couple of years ago, one day I just got obsessed with Morgan Freeman. And I just thought Morgan Freeman's awesome. I've always known that, but I think I'd like to try to talk like Morgan Freeman. So I just started to, I get like obsessed on these little things. So I was just walking around the house trying to talk like Morgan Freeman, my wife was like, would you stop doing that? So then I just posted on Facebook, I'm trying to talk like Morgan Freeman, my wife is gonna kill me. And so people were like, oh, that's hilarious, whatever. Oh, you should post a video of it, which I had never done before. And I literally remember I was walking up the stairs of my house, and I literally just turned the camera on myself, and I said, I'm trying to talk like Morgan Freeman, my wife wants to kill me. So people were like, oh, yeah, that was really good. Oh, I thought that was really good.
You know, you have to do it for us, Joel. You can't just talk about it.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. But so then, so one of my best friends is Daniel Day Kim. So I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, hey, did you check out that Morgan Freeman thing I posted on Facebook today? He said, yeah, it was okay. And I said, what do you mean okay? He said, well, the video is you saying, I'm trying to talk like Morgan Freeman. If you're going to do it, you should go all the way. You shouldn't apologize for it. And I was like, huh. All right, okay. So then that night, I'm lying in bed. I'm putting my daughter to sleep. I'm just staring at the ceiling. I'm like, go all the way with it. Go all the way with it. So I get up. It's midnight. I go and I pour myself a whiskey. Drinking a whiskey. I go online and I find Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption doing this monologue about being rehabilitated. I don't know if you know The Shawshank Redemption, but he comes up in front of the parole board and they ask, are you rehabilitated? He gives this little monologue. So, 15 minutes, I learn it, I hold up my phone, totally straight, right to the camera, I just do the rehabilitated monologue, put it on Facebook, and then I call Dan and I go, is that going all the way enough for you? And I hang up and I go to bed. So the next day, he says, okay, I think that was a great Morgan Freeman impersonation. So I think, okay, I'm done. That was great between friends. A couple days later, I get a message out of the blue from a woman that I went to grad acting with at NYU who I haven't talked to in 15 years. And it just says, have you talked to anyone? Did you get a job? And so I think she's been hacked. And I say, hey, great to hear from you. Did you send this? I don't know what you're talking about. So then she sends me a really long message back. She says, this weekend I was at another classmate's wedding. We were in Mexico. I met this friend. We were talking about great movies that shot in Mexico. Shawshank Redemption came up, and I was like, oh my God, this friend of mine just posted this video of him doing Morgan Freeman. Showed her at this bar in Mexico, this Facebook video. The woman becomes obsessed with the video. She's like, oh, well, she's looking at it all weekend. Turns out this woman is a former senior executive at NBC. She's now the CEO of of Gaumont International, which is, Gaumont is the biggest production company in Europe, and now they've started this American thing, and they're casting, their first project is Hemlock Grove. They can't cast this particular part, and for some reason she's thinking about the Morgan Freeman guy, and she thinks maybe this guy should be seen for this. And so I read this letter, and in my inbox is an audition for Hemlock Grove, which I should have known there was a story behind it because it was the first series regular I've been, the first audition I'd had for series regular in more than a year. And so suddenly I was like, oh my God, I better do a really good job on this audition. So I work really hard on it. We send it off. 3 weeks go by, don't hear anything. So on the day I start writing my friend back to say, thanks so much, what a great story that almost was, I get a call from my agents and they say, do you remember that project, Hemlock Grove? Yes. Well, they're making an offer. And I say, okay, well, so who do I have to go back in for? You don't have to go back in for anyone, they're making an offer. And I said, wait a minute, so not a callback or anything? They were like, it's the weirdest thing, they're making an offer. And I said, I haven't met anyone. I just sent a tape and I sent it in. And they said, we know. So when I showed up to Toronto to shoot Hemlock Grove last year for the first season, I hadn't met the casting director. I hadn't met anybody. I thought I was going to be fired within the first couple of days. And it all started just literally from putting something out there. And somehow that kind of got me on, later, I heard there was an offer, just to people who are nothing like me, people who, it just put myself in a situation to be seen by somebody in a completely different context, to then be put into another context. And the timing was such that they were looking for this part, they didn't know how to look, they were open to a new idea. This came along, and it's turned out to be certainly, as far as film and television goes, the most edifying experience I've had in at least 10 years. And so, I guess the lesson from that, if there is a lesson to be had, is just that you have to put it out there fully, whatever that might be. And it's not like you should go make a video, who knows what it is, but just, I'd never done anything like that before in my life, and it certainly wasn't to be seen for anything, it was just to kind of settle a score with a friend. But if you put something out there fully, you just never know what's going to happen. And then you put it out there fully, and Lena Dunham comes,
Right.
Or you just you show up,
What I love, that's a great story.
Yeah, you show up.
Did you use the Morgan Friedman accent.
No,
Okay.
no.
What I love about that story, though, too, is it really talks about sort of, so often we spend our time sort of going to, these auditions where it's so rare that we do get a series regular role, or, things that might not be as artistically fulfilling. But here was an example where you're just, elementally back to sort of that thing of that craft of acting. This is what I want to do, the passion. This is what I'm doing for fun, what I do for myself. Can sometimes lead you, the things that are more artistically fulfilling for you might lead to greater success than sort of the tried and true path, just the straight and narrow. Do you guys ready for some questions from the audience? Between auditions and gigs, what do you do with your time? Hobbies, jobs, creative endeavors? In other words, how do you fill the space and feel satisfied with your career when you're waiting for the next gig? Jimmy?
Jimmy.
Oh, man.
You said you have hobbies.
Yeah. You did.
I used to do a lot of things, but I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer, because I waste a lot of time. I'm a big waster. I just waste time. I watch TV and stuff like that. But, ideally, what you should do is like read plays. And
No. I don't want the right answer. I want your answer.
work on monologues and things, work on different voices, I'm going to go home and do that tonight. I got to figure out who it is, but I'm going to post something because I need a job. So, but really, I don't know. I just, well, actually, what uses up a lot of time is that I have a lot of, I do have auditions. I don't necessarily book many of them, but I have a lot of auditions. And so every time I have an audition, I need to spend time, like I focus totally on that thing. And so, for the next day, whatever, how much time I have before that, I'm just going over it, and I'm trying to, because it's what I do. And so whenever there's an opportunity to work, that's the most important thing to me. And every audition is the step towards what I want to do. So I sort of just focus in on that. And then, because there's so many times when I don't have an audition, and so I'm free to then do whatever else I want to do. So whenever I'm working, basically that takes up my, if I'm working on a film, if I'm working on a TV show, if I'm working on a play, I know it's going to end. I know after 2 weeks this gig's going to end. I know after this, these few days, I know after this run it's going to end. And when it ends, I got plenty of time to go to the movies, to just hang out, to do this or that. So while I've got the time where I'm obligated or committed to a project, that's what I love. And so I will put as much focus into that time as I can. And a lot of my time is taken up with just preparing for auditions and things like that.
Anyone else? How do you continue to be creatively fulfilled between gigs?
Writing, trying to write, trying to just make stuff, however stupid or small. It's also good, I feel like, for actors, it's this business of me, Like, we are like our own sort of like hovercraft of a private enterprise, just navigating alone. I mean, really, you're alone, and it's demanding in ways that you don't really expect. There's a lot of wake up, get up at 4 a.m., go over there, wait in a trailer for hours, get ready, And then come out, just stand over there, go over there, and like hit your mark there, and say your line twice as fast with your left foot moving first, and then, then touch your hair like this, and like, wait, don't do that, continuity. Go back to your trailer, stay there, eat this, okay, come back, hurry, okay, you're done, sign here, go. And then you're like, and you're done, and then you've managed to have pulled off that day, and you would expect someone to be like, good job, yeah. No one's doing that. It's like you do your job, and you're lucky if you have done your job. Everyone just expect you to do your job. So my point is, when I'm not working, I'm not working, I think it's important to not like think about like, oh, weird, my bangs are doing this weird thing on camera, like if we do that, and like it becomes so internal, and just trying to spend time with people who don't have anything to do with this weird business and job, and trying to read and just generally just trying not to be an asshole in life, like just being interested in other things and people, and then you can go back to your juice cleanse and your whatever you need to do.
Try not to be an asshole is your advice. This is a question about the difference between being a film and a stage actor. In particular, this question is, how are the obstacles you face as a stage actor different from the ones you face as a film actor?
About $65,000.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between stage and film. Yeah.
You still got to do the work. I mean, there are films, like the one film that I did, where I'm singing behind Queen Latifah, where it's not so different than doing stage work. And then there are films, like so much of the work that Jimmy has done, where there's a tight shot on him, and you see what life has taken from this man for the last 40 years in one blink. That's so incredibly subtle. And it's no different than doing stage work, where sometimes it's Moliere, and sometimes it's, photorealism, and sometimes you're dancing with a baton and playing the piano at the same time, and sometimes you're, just having dinner with your family on stage. So it depends on the tone, the style of whatever piece it is, whether it's in front of the camera or not.
I think it's different manifestations of stamina. Like
it's a different process, yeah.
Like if you're doing, God, when just you and Kung Fu, my gosh, like the stamina, just the long, just through the rehearsal process and the run and the 8 shows a week and everything, like that kind of stamina, that's just like major hat tip. And then the other kind of stamina is to sit, to get to prepare, then you show up and you're totally isolated by yourself, and to wait for sometimes 10 hours and wherever you are.
Done anything.
You haven't done anything, to be brought in, you're totally cold, or unless you have to find a way to prepare, and then to have the stamina to then focus for 4 hours on like a 10-second scene or something like that, or that's a completely different kind of stamina, but both are tremendously demanding. And I think they require different kinds of preparation. I think you're after the same kind of thing, but the way that you pace yourself and the way that you approach it, I think, has to be a little bit different,
Don't you feel like, though, that theater has helped? That your vast experience working on the stage, that you feel equipped in a different way, maybe, than someone who hasn't?
I feel like I ask myself different questions than somebody who hasn't been on stage.
Yeah.
I was an English major in school, so I didn't study this, but it means that I approach the work from a very text-based way, and I think about technique, and I think about things, ideas behind the script, not just what is my character thinking, what is my character feeling.
Right. When's my next line? What page?
Should my banks be this way or that way? I don't know whether that's stage or not. It's just my orientation.
Jimmy, you've done so much theater and film and TV.
Yeah, you know, in theater, it's really nice because you can go back to it the next night. There's a long rehearsal process, and you can really think about the character, and you can think about moments. And sometimes, you have a night, and you do the show, and you're thinking about this moment or that moment. You can go the next day and work on it, and see if it works, see if it doesn't. But it's crazy, film and TV, you do it, a lot of times you just show up, and the director, you have like half an hour or less to figure out what you're going to be doing. You're shown where the environment that you're in, and you go, oh, okay, well, this is where we are, and everything's boom, 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 and then you work it out, and then you shoot it, and then that's it. Like, you can be driving home thinking, oh man, I should have done that. Oh, that's what it was going. But they're not going to go back to because you say, I could have done that better.
You guys, can we set up that shot from yesterday again? I think I can do it better.
Yeah.
Bam, we're moving on. And so if you get it right, you're really lucky. Yeah, but the other thing is, you get a chance to just do it over and over. Like at that time, you can do it over and over, and that's why, like, if you're doing it, if you're throwing it out a certain way, then use the opportunity to not always be delivering your lines the same way, because any sort of inspiration, that's why they say, like, if accidents happen, that can be the greatest thing, because that take can be so fresh and so, unique, because some little accident happened, and maybe that's what they'll use. So you have to, like, oh, my water spilled. Oh, can we cut? No, go with it, because they'll just shoot it, and then if that's a problem, then they'll do it again, and maybe the water won't. Then water maybe won't spill, but you just have to be open to the surprises, and you have to be so much more sort of spontaneous when you're working on film and TV, because that's your shot. That's your one shot, and theater, you can just let it grow.
What about in terms of building a character? Because there's a huge difference between having 3 weeks to delve deep into a character, and sometimes, like in TV, or in TV and film, you see a lot of people sort of just, or I found that, I'm usually called to be more myself and not as transformative in the roles that I played in TV and film than I do on stage. Do you guys find that? Is there a difference in terms of the creation of the character for theater versus film?
I think there can be. I think, the collaboration that happens between your fellow actors and the designers in a play is different than, in the creation of a character is different than when you're in front of a camera, because the primary storytelling component in film and television is the camera. So sometimes, you can grow, your character can grow or manifest itself through the movement of the camera or through the placement of the camera. And sometimes I watch things and I learn so much about my character based on what the DP has done or how it's lit or something. Like, I get an idea, which is why, like, I'm always fascinated when people don't like to watch their work, like, in front of a camera, because I think you miss out on, like, a crucial part of the process, like, especially if you're working on television, especially like if you're doing something every week for a while, or you're doing, and potentially for years, like, by watching that, like, you actually have a chance to collaborate with people by watching how they conceive your character, like, I was just watching a show the other day, and I was interested because I was very interested at the amount of stuff, scene work that would start, and things would happen for a while before anybody said anything. And it's interesting because on a show like Law and Order, for example, people are always talking. The second you go talk, cut, cut. And this show, it was like you'd start a scene, someone would walk in and they're drying their hair. And then they put the thing down. And I was like, oh my God, you just learn so much about somebody from the way that they dry their hair, the way that they walked into the room, And so I wondered if she was watching that and just learning so much about her character there, or if that had been collaborative because she was playing a whole bunch of different characters or whatever. So,
fascinating. How are we on time here? Time to wrap it up. 1 minute? 1 minute. Okay. I wish there was like a countdown clock. Great. Why don't we just take this minute to talk about anything else that you guys would like to talk about? Talk about the projects that you guys are working on. How was this pilot for you, Greta, that you just shot?
Oh, man. Pilots. That's like a whole other session of these. My God. Pilots. I feel like, yeah, it was amazing. I worship Amy Poehler. She was my boss. It was wonderful and terrifying. You know, you think sometimes comedy, it's all about, you know, jokes on set. You know, everyone's just trying to be as funny as they can. It's a serious business, and it was really fascinating to see the working process of you know, some of my favorite people. David Wayne was a director, and just sort of the, you know, also, yes, we are here because we are Asian. I am also a woman.
Yay!
I like that, gets an applause. But, oh my gosh, yeah, thank you. But I think for me personally, seeing a female run the show unapologetically, how she was doing that was like just so incredible to watch. And I learned so much how to do that, to be the boss and not apologize for being the boss, and you know, how to negotiate like gender roles. And so anyways, there's that. But also, yes, shooting pilots in and of itself, it's like a whole other beast. The pilot is usually broad strokes of a show. So the first episode of a series is often really nothing like the rest of the show. You have to please the networks, you have to please the advertisers, and you just try and stay out of everyone's way, really.
There's so much that you can't control.
Yeah, and even less than you normally can. And it's just, especially after this really intense, long sequence of events that have had to happen in order to get the pilot. My God, it's like the auditions, you know, if the casting director doesn't know you, then maybe you'll have to screen. And then you screen through them, they'll call you back. Then you will have to do an audition with the producers and the creators. So that's, you know, your second audition. Then they'll call you back. Bring in maybe the hero of the show for a chemistry test. That's audition number 3. We're like halfway through. It's amazing. Then they finally decide, okay, maybe we'll test you. And before you test, you sign a contract for 7 years of your life. It's this really intense moment where you don't know if the show's gonna go, but you're signing away 7 years of your life if it goes. And if you're lucky enough for the show to be a hit. And you better hope at that moment you like these people that you just met 5 minutes ago, because you're gonna be stuck with them for a really long time. And then after you do that, you do the studio test. If you pass the first test, you do the studio test. And then only then, and it's amazing. It's like American Idol. They'll be like, can everyone stand up in a line? And they'll be like, thank you very much, goodbye. Thank you very much, goodbye. And like you two, it's nuts. It's almost like it's athletic.
How do you keep a center of yourself within that sort of nerve-wracking process?
What center? How, what?
No.
No. This past season, I was lucky enough to have a test for How I Met Your Dad, the spinoff. The same day that I had my test for Old Soul, for Amy Poehler and Friends. And I had Old Soul first. And you know, then there's like first position, second position. It's like so much work deciding things that haven't happened yet. Mm-hmm. So even before you know if you have a job, you have to rank them and decide which one you like better. And try not to pay attention to, you know, what are my chances? You know, you just, I know we're running out of time, but basically it's very hard. It's very, very hard and thrilling. But you can do all of these things make it to the table read, and then you can get fired at the table read. It happens all the time. The girl who got, thank God I didn't get How I Met Your Dad, because then I could do Old Soul with Amy Poehler, and the girl that they had cast for How I Met Your Dad, they fired her after the table read.
Wow.
It's nuts. And then last year I shot a pilot for ABC, made it through the table read. Oh my God, they didn't fire me. Shot the whole thing and it didn't get picked up. So it's like
you can't have any expectations
no,
whatsoever.
you can't.
Yeah.
Just do a Morgan Freeman impersonation, you bypass all of it.
Yeah, put it on Facebook. Yeah.
On that note, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists today for a fantastic discussion. I want to thank our audience for being here, and thank you to the SAG Foundation. Make sure to check out some of their other YouTube videos online and subscribe. Thank you very much, everybody.